Did y'all hear that sizzle, y'all? Today I'm going to show you how to make the best ever baked and creamy collard greens. It's so much juiciness and goldenness on the top. You want to make this recipe, so let's get to cooking. I'm starting out with a bag of shredded collard greens. This is a 32-ounce bag, 2 pounds. I'm only going to use a pound. We're going to season this with sea salt, black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, complete seasoning, ground nutmeg, and heavy cream. And I have an assortment of cheeses. I'm not going to use a full quantity, but an assortment of smoked Gouda, Parmesan cheese, fresh Parmesan cheese, not dried, New York extra sharp cheddar, an assorted Italian 6-blend cheese, as well as mozzarella cheese. So we're going to wash our collard greens in white vinegar and then rinse it and drain it completely. Before we stick it in a pot, just enough water to cover half of the collard greens. And as these collard greens cook, we're going to season them with garlic powder, onion powder, complete seasonings, black pepper, and I'm going to go easy on the sea salt at this point because the cheese that we're going to add is going to have a lot of salt in it. So just add a teeny pinch of salt and you can actually leave it out completely. What we're going to do is let these collard greens boil for about 20 minutes and you'll see the water reducing down, helping to intensify the flavor. And then we're going to let it cook for another 25 minutes. So a total of 45 minutes on the stove, just to get it mostly tender and let it absorb the seasonings. That's the reason for using a little bit of salt, to help that water infuse with the seasonings into the greens. Now, we're going to drain the greens, but you see the water is running in the background. That is cool water going down the drain so that the hot water from the greens don't mess up any of my pipes, PVC pipes below my sink. So our cooked greens are draining. You can either use a clean kitchen towel or a disposable paper towel like I'm going to use here. And once your greens have cooled down so that you can handle them, just grab a handful in your paper towel and squeeze it. We want to squeeze out all the liquid because we are going to bake these greens and we don't want that extra water in there to dilute the flavor. That's why we didn't rinse these, because we don't want to rinse off our delicious seasonings. So now we're ready to start with our cheese. This is smoked Gouda cheese from Costco. This wasn't my favorite brand. It didn't have as intense of a flavor, but I used about 6 or 7 ounces, so almost half a pound of smoked Gouda cheese. And I'm just going to cut it with my knife into big chunks. Now, this video is sped up. You want to cut your cheese slowly so you don't hurt yourself. But this cheese wouldn't grate easily because it is kind of soft. So just use a big knife. Take your time and cut it into big chunks. I'm going to grate some of my cheese and I want some of the cheese in big chunks. I like that contrast and texture of the different cheeses as they melt. That's the reason why I'm using a variety of cheeses, as well as I'm cutting it in different styles. Now this is my Parmesan cheese. This is an 8-ounce triangle, but you'll notice on the perimeter some of it is darkened, which is how it always comes. I'm not sure if that's wax though, or if that part is edible. I cut it off and don't use it. So this might be 6 ounces of Parmesan cheese actually, but Parmesan is a hard cheese, so it grates easily on my box grater. And when I get down to a small part, I just break it with my hands. I don't try to grate it and end up grating my finger. So look at that beautiful Parmesan cheese. Next up, I have an 8-ounce block of mozzarella cheese, and I'm only going to use about 4 ounces of it here, and I'm going to put the other 4 ounces to the side. If I decide I want to use it later, then I will. So I'm just grating up my mozzarella cheese. So far we have 8 ounces of Gouda, 6 to 8 ounces of Parmesan, and about 4 ounces of mozzarella. And this isn't all the cheese we're going to use. This is the cheese that we're going to use in our cheese sauce, which we're starting now. So I have my 1 pint of heavy cream, and I have some Kerrygold butter. This is the same pot that I poured the collard greens out of. I didn't rinse the pot because we're just going to put our collard greens back in here anyway. So why rinse out the seasoning? So put a tablespoon of butter in the pan to let it melt, and then add your pint of heavy cream. I'm also adding a dash, so you can see that's a small couple of pinches of nutmeg. I'm also adding smoked paprika. Now I am seasoning to my personal flavor, so I would recommend for a pint of heavy cream and a pound of collard greens, you might go in with 2 or 3 teaspoons of each seasoning. And if it's a seasoning you know you like garlic, onion, or paprika, then maybe you could add a tablespoon. But it's up to you. So now I have my heavy cream that is on a warm eye, but you notice it's not boiling because I don't want it to scorch. So as it's just gently simmering on a medium-high heat, I'm adding some of my cheese in batches just to let the shredded cheese melt gently. And you'll notice that I am constantly stirring it with my silicone utensil, just so that the cheese and the heavy cream doesn't scorch in my pan, because this is dairy and we know that dairy products can scorch easily if you let it sit too long. But even in this video, you can see the steam rising up, so you can see that it is cooking and it is melting. It's going to take a little bit of time. So keep stirring, be patient, and don't walk away from any dairy that you have cooking on the stove. Now that my grated cheese has melted down mostly, and you can see the pieces of collard greens that was still in the pot, I'm adding some of my smoked Gouda and just giving it a stir. And you can tell when your cheese sauce is ready when the cheese sauce covers your spoon. Now, you could do this with a wooden spoon, but I happen to notice it coat my silicone spoon just fine. We want a little bit of thickness and body to this cheese sauce. So I added the remainder of my cheese, and I'm just giving that a stir. And look at how thick and creamy this is starting to look already. You can notice how it's coating the silicone utensil more. So now that I have that ready, I'm adding my drained and squeezed cooked collard greens. It's important not to use raw here because we want this to be very tender. So this is just 1 pound of cooked collard greens, and we're going to stir it into our cheese sauce. Keep stirring, and you can already start to see the cheese pull. Look at that, y'all. And you can see after a few minutes how it looks. Look at that. You could actually eat it at this point just like you would cream spinach, but we're going to cook it up another notch, and we're going to bake this to get that smoky, intensified flavor that comes when you bake or roast food. So with these cream collard greens, we're going to sit them to the side and get a glass baking dish or any baking dish you like. Because it's cheese, I am going to spray the bottom of this with some olive oil spray just so it doesn't stick to the bottom as it cooks. And then I'm just going to put in half of my creamed collard greens into the bottom of my pan. The reason I'm putting half is because I want to spread out that half over the bottom, and then I'm going to add some of my fancy shredded Italian cheese, 6-cheese blend in the middle. So I like the difference of texture of using the cream sauce versus just shredded cheese in the middle. So I put the second half of cream collard greens on top, and then I use additional shredded cheese on top. We are going to let this caramelize and get brown. Now you'll notice I didn't use the whole 10 ounces. I probably used about 8 ounces, and I'm wiping the sides off so they don't harden as they cook. I baked this in the oven covered in foil for about 30 minutes, and then after 30 minutes, I took the foil off and I let it cook for another 15 minutes until it got golden and brown and crispy on top. That amount of cheese in it is going to not let it dry out, so you'll notice it will be bubbling, and y'all look at this. It smells so good. This is a great alternative to baked macaroni and cheese because this is low carb. There's no pasta in this. Now, I'm not saying this is a health dish because of the amount of cream, butter, and cheese, but if you want an indulgent, creamy, delicious side dish other than macaroni and cheese, you definitely want to try this out. And if you love soul food, and chances are good you're going to love collard greens. So give this collard green a recipe and let me know in the comments how you like it. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please subscribe to my channel.